The Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation. We created the Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation so you can magnetize the better relationships you want and focus on the positive role that you have in creating a better life through your relationships. We are excited for you to discover the gold within you that can help you manifest the love we all crave. The Building Better Relationships Journal has coaching questions that help you listen to the truth of what you want and what helps you to be empowered in love. The Building Better Relationships meditation is designed to strengthen your heart's ability to be that change you wish to see in the world. Why not download it now and think of it as a gift to those you love? If you love journaling and meditation, this is for you. Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patti podcast. This is Patti, a leadership and work-life balance coach from Arizona, USA.
And this is Angela, love and relationship coach from Sydney, Australia. And we are building better relationships with you.
Sharing new perspectives on being heart-centered at home and at work.
So you can draw on your inner power to make your relationships and the world a better place to be around.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and joining. Good to be back with you, Patti.
You too, Angela.
Yeah, I feel like every time we reconnect, it's like a whole bunch of life has been happening since the last time we connected.
Yes. And welcome, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and talk about our topic. So I'm going to ask a question. Ever felt like you were waiting for someone else to speak up, step in, or take the lead, only to find that no one did? Today we're exploring a common phrase that speaks volumes. Someone else will do it.
And when we look at that phrase, someone else will do it, what we're talking about, it's not just about picking up the slack for other people with things around the house or work. It's actually a habit, a way of living now in our lifestyle, in our culture, especially during these times of enormous change. With everything happening in the world, people are scared, they're anxious, and they're often feeling helpless. I'm having a lot of experiences, conversations with people where they really don't know how to change things or what to do. So that can lead to withdrawal, blame, or hoping that someone else will step in and fix the situation. And so whether it's in our communities, our workplaces, or even our families, there's this growing sense of disconnection. Instead of getting together, talking about what's possible or how we can support each other or create a different outcome or change or fix a problem, people are isolating. And that is going to have and is already having an enormous impact on people.
Yeah, I mean, I at times feel like I isolate myself as well, Angela. We see this especially in the workplace. There's more and more chaos, rapid change, technology changing every time you turn around. You walk into the office and there's something new, some new update, unrealistic expectations, and a real crisis around mental health. People are burning out, disengaging, and falling into a pattern of silently quitting. In a time when the world feels chaotic and overwhelming, many people are retreating. The emotional weight of constant change at work, in our families, and across society is leaving us burned out, disconnected, and increasingly passive.
And so today, what we're going to explore is how to stop doing it all and break the someone else will do it trap. Meaning, how will you stop trying to fix the problems that are going on without turning to others, without discussing with others, without first even acknowledging how you're feeling overwhelmed and taking proactive steps to deal with that. And also how we can get into isolation and become passive, and how to stop that habit by thinking somebody else is going to fix it and somebody else is going to step in. So we're going to explore as well what's really going on beneath this cultural habit or this thinking pattern of somebody else will do it, and at the end we'll look at some practical tips of how to shift from being passive or being frustrated. Because believe me, I'm talking from my experience. I know what it's like to feel somebody should do something about this when actually I need to start a conversation. And so we're going to look at how to take those steps to meaningful conversations that lead to action, connection, and healthier boundaries. So, Patti, let's look at what are some of the symptoms of this habit of thinking that somebody else will do it. Like, one thing that we've spoken about over the years now, almost we're coming up to 9 years that we've been doing the podcasts. We've been discussing things like problems in the workplace because there's a lack of communication or a lack of awareness of people's personality types, like the doer versus the more passive person. So people can tend to fall into traps like that. But can you give us a lay of the land in the workplace? What's the general problems that you see with this cultural habit where we see a problem and we start thinking somebody else will fix it?
Well, it depends on the culture of the environment that you're in, whether you're fearful to step up and take action, or you just have so much on your plate that you can't take on any more, or you're fearful that you're told that you're doing it wrong. So you get to the point where you won't even try. You'll do the bare minimum because of how you're treated, how you're spoken to. People won't step up because they don't know how to do it. They haven't been trained or mentored on how to do that certain project or fix that certain, how do I put it? They don't have the knowledge because they haven't been shown how to do it, or they don't have the confidence. And with technology changing constantly and rapidly, that also brings out fear because you don't know how to do it. Or you have to try to teach yourself and you can't keep up with it. Those are some of the problems that I've seen in the workplace. Also, being afraid of your superiors, being afraid to speak up or share, oh, this might be a good idea, because you're not encouraged to do it. There's not that open communication to say, oh, I have a better idea. Let's try it. Instead of not trying it because What if it goes wrong? Instead of having that freedom to go ahead and take that step and try something new.
And I can imagine that some people wouldn't speak up if they see something that's not working because they think, who am I to say something to either superiors or in the workplace or in a group setting in general? And plus, sometimes if it's about something not working, is there a habit that we go inside of ourselves and say, this, it's me, I don't know how to do the job well enough, or I'm not trying hard enough, or we blame ourselves versus thinking there's actually a systemic problem or lack of training?
I think it's a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of what the environment's like and how you're treated. A lot of times, you don't want to be belittled. You don't want to be that guy, right? We've talked about that before. Shaming, feeling shameful to bring up something that might really make a difference. And having that freedom to do that. A lot of people feel they don't have any choice. They feel unheard. They feel like they're just a number. They feel, all of these things that the company doesn't respect them or care about them. And that's why people are leaving or people are silently quitting, because they feel no love or no compassion or empathy or anything. It's always chaos. People are pitting people against each other, those kind of things. And hopefully this will change and people will not be fearful or overwhelmed. And then, like we've brought up in the past, there's the doers that just take on everything and then they get burned out. They have nothing left to give because they've been doing. And actually, are they being respected? Do they feel respected? Do others feel respected? We kind of fall into this little pattern, and breaking that pattern is so important.
Yeah, I was thinking about the doers, the people that overdo. There's in some of the mental health fields in Australia right now, we have a shortage of a lot of professions, people who basically can support people with mental health problems. Psychiatrists have walked out of a lot of our public healthcare system, but also in private practice, there's a shortage of psychiatrists now. And they just can't do the job because of the actual increase of mental health. There's not enough work, but there's actually too many people for the people there. So one of the systemic problems now that I see is that the doers who normally would be filling up the gaps of the people who are not the doers, who are more passive, just waiting around for somebody else to do it, is that the people who are the doers, there's only so much they can do. Mm-hmm. And the system is changing so fast that we can't keep up with the rate of change. So not only are the doers getting burnt out, but the actual capacity of the whole system is completely getting out of balance. And now it's just a matter of, well, we just got to keep going to somehow make it work and get along. And the first thing that goes out when people are overworked and have no time is conversations about what's not working. So that's another big thing I'm seeing just at a macro level of the healthcare profession here. or the mental health care profession. One thing I was concerned about with the workspace is this. You were saying that people need to have training about how to do things. So they might have that fear of if something's not working or they don't know how to do it, they may not have the capacity, and then they might have the capacity of how to fix something that they don't know to do, and then they don't have the capacity to ask for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the previous decades, before the pandemic and before we had technology being such a big part of how we do work and remote work, you would have had more human contact where you could just go, you could, if you were a manager, which you were, you could see one of your co-workers or your people underneath you in the hierarchy of employees, the people you were managing, you could see if they were struggling. And you could, because of who you are, you would have that conversation. You take them aside, you talk to them, you do that. What I'm concerned about.
Find out what's working, find out what's not working, what they need help with, how can I help them, how can we all come together and help each other, those kind of things. Yes, having that open dialogue with each other and people feeling okay to come and say, I need the help. I'm not sure how to do this. Asking for some guidance. Those are the things that are needed. We need to feel comfortable to say, you know what, this isn't working for me. Can I do it another way? Do you have some suggestions? And
Right.
helping make the workplace an enjoyable place to come to, and not being afraid, and being able to step up and say, and help each other. Oh, I know how to do this. Let me help you and show you how, and work together to make things better. And not being afraid to ask for that help. I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for help.
This is what I'm seeing with remote work or the hybrid work, where you have one day in the office or a few days and a lot where you're not there, and a lot of Zoom meetings or a lot of things that are just handed off to you now because AI has automated things, or your systems are more data-driven, or you put input emails and you send emails, you don't meet in person. It's a lack of actually talking, not seeing their body language, where someone might be struggling and you can step in and go, have the water cooler conversation. Oh, so are you okay? What's going on? You can't have those touch-based human connections where you can check in. And so a lot of assumptions are made when we're working in isolation or in remote work or virtually. And that way, a lot of misunderstandings happen where you have to resolve things via email, which just sometimes can't be done via email. And going back to the pace of change, what I'm seeing is that with AI and changes in our society happening so fast, and it's not just AI, it's also things like remote work. How do you get people up to speed when you're not actually together, when the pace of change may be actually the problem for them, when they're actually not sure how to pivot or what the system is required now for this new change? Or if they're overworked, they might be just running day to day and not looking at the problems of the organisation because the work gets too much and they just have to keep up with the level of work. I notice in the healthcare, because I'm around a lot of people in that support work industry here in Sydney, a lot of things fall through the cracks. And because we work separately with someone, we don't have that regular communication. And the only thing in my experience was when we got together and had a chat. That's when things could shift, when we had that human conversation about, look, this is not working. What can we do? And to me, to my surprise, when we did that conversation, the solutions happened really fast. But after the conversation, it's whether the actions actually got implemented, take place.
Yeah. Having that conversation is so important. When you're not having conversation and you're not asking questions and you're not finding out what's really going on, things will continue to be the same. Nothing gets fixed, nothing changes, and people get frustrated because nothing's changing, or they don't know even how to do their jobs because it's changing so fast, right? You're given one task and then you're told to do another task and another task, and you're trying to learn a new computer system, right? And it can be very overwhelming for everyone involved.
Yeah, even the managers and the leaders in the companies or organizations. Yeah. So this is something that I was wondering, like sometimes the habit of someone else will do it is actually from these unrealistic expectations somehow that the company has to meet these goals or KPIs or somehow has to be perfect. I know in the service industry here for support work, there's a lot of expectations on the support workers. I know some support workers don't follow those expectations. I've seen that in the industry. They're more relaxed and laid back, and they're a bit in the habit of letting somebody else do it. But there is quite a high expectation, especially where I am in Sydney, for providing excellent work. Like if you're not at this high level, somehow you, the worker, are the problem. And it just feels to me, I talk a lot about this with people of my age, which is in their mid-50s. The expectations are now that somehow you have to do it all. You have to be at this high optimum output level, which isn't really realistic because not all of us are good at everything. And I'm just wondering from a manager perspective, with all of your time working as a manager, what's driving these unrealistic expectations in a corporate environment or a work environment? Like,
Wow, that's a good question, Angela. It can be anything. It can be the goals. It can be the organization's expectations. It can be a leader's expectation on what you're supposed to meet. You know, there's all these objectives, different things that you're supposed to complete, and is it really realistic, the goals that are set for you, especially when things are changing in so many different ways? What might have been a goal at a different time, with things changing, might not be able to be completed at the same rate that it used to be. Maybe it can be completed faster due to the technology. But are the employees trained well enough to understand that it can be a lot faster if you do it in certain steps and shown how to do it, and not say, go watch something and try to figure it out? You know, there has to be some For some people, they can they really move fast with technology. They understand technology. And then you have the people that are kind of in the middle. They understand, but they're not as good as the people that really understand it, right? And then you have the people that they don't. They need that extra help. You need to know who the you need to know as a manager and supervisor who's going to need additional help so that they can succeed, right? And help, and also the people that are succeeding, what are they doing to succeed? And share that knowledge with others and with you so that you can help everybody succeed. But goals, everybody's thinking so much on the goals. We got to hit this, we got to hit that, we got to hit this. Well, if you're not hitting it, why? What's going on? And actually talk about it. Where is the struggle that we're not meeting our goals? Does it need to be adjusted? And how do we get that adjusted? Because a lot of times the goals aren't set by the people doing the work. They're set way high up.
Okay. That's interesting, because that's where I feel there's a mismatch. So in your management background, you would ask these questions, or what did you do to sort of evaluate where was effective progress and people needing help? What would you do to measure that?
And actually talking to your employees and sitting down and looking at the goals together and seeing, okay, we're not meeting these goals. Let's talk about why. And then things get changed a lot. You'll get something new that will come in, and that will affect the goals. You get new inventory or new processes or things like that. And that does affect the work environment in so many different ways.
So I'm really curious, because to me, I'm going to switch to more how personal relationships are affected by this habit of thinking these problems, somebody else is going to fix them, and we defer power in our personal relationships. I'm going to switch to that. But I think what's common between the work environment and the home environment is, firstly, not having time to review what's working, not working, and not speaking about it together. And the other thing, I think, is this relationship to change. Like if there's a new thing in your family, a classic thing is like a member of the family passes or a new person is added to the family. It's an enormous change. And often we're so caught up in the change that we don't get to sort of reflect on a lot of things that you might be feeling that you can't cope with, or that things are not being dealt with and they're just ignored, and we go into passivity and not reflecting about those things. We just sort of let it slide. So it's interesting that in the past in management, it looks like you had these ongoing touchstone conversations, and you looked at change, new processes that were brought in, and how that changed the relationship or the expectations and the boundaries.
Yes.
The relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I wanted to switch to the home front and look at how this thinking of somebody else will do it in the family. So we mentioned that it's not just about the chores and the dishes, even though Patty and I love how that plays out in our lives. And we have all sorts of strategies for dishwashing techniques to I have a game with the dishes, so I'm quite happy to have jokes about the dishes. But what about the dynamics in family where certain changes in the family can happen, or as in my experience, what I've found fascinating with family is that a lot of the childhood stuff that we don't get to express, we don't get to explore. As children, we grow up with this mindset that the adults are going to do that stuff. They're going to come in, they're going to look after things, they're going to take care of it. They're going to take responsibility for something that I can't do. And especially we, as children, we think a lot, I don't know what to do in this situation. We're often left in that situation quite a bit because we don't know. We're not born knowing how to do social relationships. We're actually a very strange animal because other animals, they know how to do social relationships. We actually have to get taught, and we get taught by our peers and adults, various adults, mostly caregivers, but also teachers and other coaches and other people around us and uncles, aunts, all that. So when the sort of hierarchy of adults doesn't teach you appropriately, that's where I find it's really interesting what goes on inside of us. We are constantly, because we're little children, we constantly have this thing, oh no, someone's going to help here. Someone's going to come and fix this. Or we think someone should do that because that's the natural order in human family dynamics. We are raised by these older, bigger people. Sometimes it's an older sibling, and they should know better. And when they don't, it creates this really interesting pattern in our heads, like resentment. It makes us feel abandoned. It makes us feel all sorts of emotions. It makes us feel like, who is going to help me? I'm alone. And that's another sort of internal dynamic, I think, that affects the workplace, where, like before, we were saying people don't speak up at work. Maybe because in their personal life when they were a child, they learned that no one's going to help me, or if I speak up, I'm going to get yelled at. Or more simply, it could be they weren't taught to ask for help. They weren't taught that it was okay to sort of go, I'm confused, I don't understand. Can you tell me, teach me? Because as a child, you're just basically a sponge and you just absorb things by osmosis. So I think in the family space, what I've seen a lot is one of the breakdowns in families is a lack of awareness. It's not just communication. We don't even have awareness that we don't know how to do this stuff, and you have to learn how to do it in a loving way or a proactive way versus a takedown way. So I'll just give an example, like what I've noticed a lot, and maybe this is more from the Australian experience, but you might relate to it. Siblings tend to like make fun of people that are younger than them because it's the pecking order in the family. Like, well, you don't know how to do that, so I'm going to make fun of you because you're younger than me and you're stupid or you don't know how to do it, so I can make fun of you, rather than another family dynamic where the sibling can see, oh, you don't know how to do that, let me teach you, let me help you. And so I've had experiences of both in my life. So I was able to clearly see the difference, and I could naturally go, I respond more positively to someone who teaches me, like similar in the workplace with you, Patti. You had those conversations and you're like, okay, how are these goals realistic or not realistic? Because you're the person doing the work. Tell me what's your experience, how you're finding this. You're doing the coaching questions and you're cultivating that awareness about the project itself. But if somebody in a family environment hasn't had that modeled for them about how you can talk about these things, their default program goes into, I shouldn't ask. I should know these things because I get made fun of if I say, I don't know what's going on. So then they can feel embarrassed if they don't know how to do something. What else I saw in the family dynamic? I'm just thinking about the passive-aggressive way that we learn to communicate in families. So families are not meant to be perfect. They're meant to be workshops for you to learn about dynamics and social relationships. But one thing that is very common when I work with others, and I wanted to see what you thought about this, but people learn to communicate from their parents. They learn negative communication styles and positive communication styles. But unfortunately, if we don't get answers, what I notice is that we tend to do things with passive aggressiveness. So the avoidance strategy that we do now when things get overwhelming, it's really, really common now in our society for people to avoid situations. It happens a lot in families when things get overwhelming. So people can then respond by being very passively aggressive. Oh, you're not doing this thing that I expect you to know or do, rather than actually talking and communicating things out. And I think what's happening now in our culture is that avoiding talking and assuming people should know things or should be better, rather than seeing, hey, somebody needs help here. I think that's actually encouraging more passive-aggressive ways of communicating. And we send out signals through our thoughts. We might complain about people. That's a very big thing that I see out in our society now. A lot of people are complaining about why is this person doing this that way? Why are they doing it that way? And unfortunately, it's a pattern in family relationships. We learn that that's okay and that it's a natural way to do it. But ultimately, it's a very unconstructive, destructive way of communicating. It doesn't lead to actually free communication. So, Patti, what are your experiences of around that? I don't know if you want to look at the family area or another area.
Sure. A thought came to my mind when you were talking, and just as an example, you can assume something, but then when you really sit down and you talk with that person, you find out so much more, and it was so much different by sitting down and let's talk about this, what's going on. And you find out what you were assuming was not even close to what was actually going on. And we've lost that. We're so much in the habit of complaining or assuming that that's where the conflict and the overwhelm and the burnout and feeling hopeless and not good enough and all of those conditions to where you're just shut down and somebody else will do it because you don't want to put yourself out there. You're afraid of rejection. But if we sit down and we talk to each other, just like in a family, once you talk to each other and you find out, you get into this heated argument, right? And then after things calm down and then you sit down and you talk calmly together, you find out what they were feeling and what you were feeling and what the situation really was before jumping to conclusions and things like that. Just if we would take that couple minutes of pause and say, okay, what is really going on here? instead of all the assumptions. And then families fall back into roles. Have you ever noticed when you go to a family function, you might be a totally different person with your friends, coworkers, acquaintances. And then when you go to a family function, you go back into that person that you're no longer, because
Yeah.
that's what everybody expects. And you expect it too. You just naturally fall into that and you're thinking, why am I doing this? This isn't me. Has that ever happened to you, Angela? Where
Yeah.
everybody kind of falls into this role, but it's really not where anybody wants to be, but you just kind of slide into it when you're at these family functions. It's those roles, it's what's expected, all of those kind of things. So how do we change that? How do we
Well,
remove
maybe,
that
yeah.
from what, I'm not that person anymore, you know? How can everybody say that and say, no, I don't want us to keep going to this point, because it's not comfortable anymore.
I personally, in my life so far, I've noticed that people have to get to that point. This is so uncomfortable. I'm playing this role and it's not me. Oh, I don't want it. It doesn't feel like me. They actually have to get to that point. And that's actually a lot of the people I've worked with. One of the awarenesses that they come to coaching with or healing work, it's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't play that role. But because from the family experience, the child experience, it's so unconscious or it's so imprinted on them. And they're quite shocked that they go into those roles and they have to have awareness. It's like, I can't do that anymore. And that's a big thing, I think. Once you realize that you're in a place of helplessness and you actually go, this is not who I want to be, that's a really important victory. So if you're watching this and you've gone to that place, you can celebrate that you've got to that place of going, I cannot be in that helpless place. But don't try to make yourself into something and try to be a hero. Allow yourself to just acknowledge perhaps some of the feelings of being helpless, because often what I work with people is, as a child, it was really hard growing up and trying to work things out, and it's natural to feel helpless. But as an adult, we think, oh, adults should have it all together. No, we're emotionally still that child. We always will be. That's our neurobiology. Don't try to be a different animal, because we're a human animal and that's how emotions work. So you need space to acknowledge them and then have maybe some different options, like somebody you can talk to help have different options around that. But helplessness, I believe that's what our society is going to be going through collectively. This year is such a busy year globally. I don't remember a year like this in my life. There's been so much change and global upheaval, and even locally there's a lot of stress in the culture. That's well, here we're quite lucky in Australia, but there's a lot of internal stress. There's a lot of mental health. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of unease. There's a lot of sense of disconnect. So I believe that's an important part of the journey. We have to go through that collectively. But why? Because I think it's to get to that place of helplessness where we just go, wow, I really do have to look at why I feel this way, instead of running away from that, which our culture has been doing for a very long time. We've been trying to make it work. And the future with AI could be that we won't have to work in the same way. So we need to, in this interim period, start looking at the costs that to the human relationships. We're trying to implement change without looking at the impact on the human. And as you were saying earlier, Patti, we're looking at the impact for the company, the goals, but we're not looking at the impact on us and the people of the organization. Are they growing? That should be a measurement of growth in our societies. In Western society, it's sort of in the background. It's not really a foreground. I mean, we do have well-being people in corporations that they have a role for HR people to encourage well-being. But more and more, there's actually more mental health roles putting into organizations because people are not coping, not just with the technology, but the society changes. And I think it's part of the conversation of someone else will do it in terms of if we don't look at what's the impact of our change in society on the individual humans and the collective of the people in any family unit or any work environment, we're not actually going to measure the right metrics. We have to look at how is this affecting us as people, and how do we have conversations that will help us to be more productive or more happy. And if we make only the measurements about productivity of the company, then I think we're missing the point. AI was supposed to remember the days of the 4-day work week, and we were going to go to less work, but instead now, well, where I am in Sydney, there's more work. It's like people are more busy, have less time. It's like, something's not right here, guys. I think we got to look at why are people so stressed, and that could help in the macro issues, help making us avoid looking at what's not working in our work environment or our home or environment in our relationships. So, Patti, sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Angela.
I was just thinking about what you shared about some practical tips to deal with how do we break the habit. You started to talk about that, and I was wondering if you could share more on how to break the habit.
I think that we all need to look within ourselves and think about, okay, what can I do to help make this change? If I'm struggling, ask for support. If you're not sure what your responsibilities are, find out what they are, or sit down and talk to your family. If it's the family, who's going to be responsible for what? Chip in when needed, but not do it all. Ask if somebody is struggling to succeed, what can you do to help? Really, communication, I think, is, and Angela, I know you and I have talked about it continuously, that communication is so important because that's when you find out what's truly going on. A text and an email is just surface. Communicating, you're getting the fullness of it. Like you had said to me earlier, body language, seeing their expression, looking at them and determining, okay, what's truly going on, and actually getting what's truly going on. Allowing people to express their feelings without shutting down, actually listening, and actually being empathetic and saying, okay, if I was in this situation, how would I feel? Do people do that anymore? I know you and I do that, Angela, but how many people actually put themselves into that other person's situation and think about, oh, if this was happening to me, how would I feel? And just stepping back and taking pause and not reacting right away, but actually pausing and saying, okay, I need a minute here. I need a minute here to really reflect on how I'm going to step up and handle this.
And you mean say that to yourself internally
Yeah.
when something's not working or you feel
Yeah. How can I make it better for me and everybody else involved?
right.
And a lot of times people are looking at how they feel, how it's affecting them, but not really looking around and seeing it's affecting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And people are angry
Mm-hmm.
because we're not talking about things. We feel like we're being dumped on. We feel like, people don't understand us. We're not being heard, all of those different things. So when will we be heard? How will we be heard? What do you need to do to be heard? And that's a lot of times where Angela and I come in as coaches. We help you understand how you're feeling, what's going on, make a plan to be able to communicate what you need to communicate and solve the problem. And more people need that confidence, need that support of someone like Angela and I to be able to bounce off ideas, to be able to really look within themselves. Am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And how can we get there? Yeah.
I like that. Being able to see what's good for me, but also what's good for others. And it starts by understanding what their experience is. Because if you don't know what they're experiencing, you're making those assumptions. You can't even start to make changes to how things are being done or not being done. Or you can't even make a new plan about a new thing that you'd like to bring in. Instead of doing it the old way, let's do it this new way. So how are you supposed to do it the new way if you don't even include the other person and talk about what their experience is? And what you shared about understanding what other people are experiencing and why are we not doing that? I think that's important to just sit and pause. Why am I not thinking about the other person's experience? Why am I just going, oh, somebody else will fix it. I don't have to deal with this. I can block that person out because they're somewhere else in another remote office or they're a family member I only see twice a year, or I don't talk to them much anymore. What is it in you that might be blocking connection? That's a good thing to explore as well. Is it some of the things that we've brought up today, like feeling helpless, you can't do anything? Because don't always think that's you. That could be something that you just got conditioned from the society or from childhood. All of us have that feeling. But do you just let that become your default operating system? Or do you go, well, maybe we could do this differently, or maybe I could just have a conversation and talk about soccer. I don't know. Maybe you don't have to talk about the issue, but just talk and actually listen. I think we've lost that sort of natural human ability to pick up the phone or walk down the street and run into someone and have a chat. In my life, we do that a lot. We call it have a chat. Go down the road and have a chat. We have that as an active part of our lifestyle because of the remoteness of work and people becoming more addicted to Netflix and TikTok and everything. People have lost those skills of communication. So we actively practice it, and I make a lot of dates with people to do practicing of communication, which may not be about this topic. It just might be practicing that human connection. And what you shared, Patti, about acknowledging people's feelings, I think that's the other thing. We want to be heard. So sometimes it's not always about going to the solution about what are the expectations of how I should be in the relationship, but you might have to go right back to just acknowledging people where they're at and listening to them and letting them speak. Because this is especially personal relationships. In a work environment, you might have deadlines or timelines you have to get things done by. But in personal relationships, I've noticed that just expecting people to resolve things by themselves does not lead to solutions. In fact, it's led to some things in my experience that I've been shocked by, how some people have basically made a decision from 40 years ago and it's changed their whole life, or it's made their life path go in a certain direction. And all it took was sitting down and having a conversation and listening that could have changed the whole direction of their life. So I believe that we can start to sharpen these skills of just acknowledging people's feelings in personal relationships, and then start to think, oh, that's really, like you shared, Patti, I never thought that was what you felt. And from that place, we can look at options of how things can be different and the roles can be different, because unfortunately in family dynamics, the roles can get very embedded and entrenched, and they can be so deep that it takes patience and time. That's why family is such an important place to work on our stuff, because most of us want to run away from family at some times, but you can't because of your family. Well, you can run away, but they're still there in your biology, your neurobiology, your memory, your limbic brain. They're still there with you, even if they've passed over. They've imprinted on you. They're in your DNA. They're in everything. So you will not run away from that completely. And I feel that the benefit of a family dynamic to work on this avoidance of what's really going on underneath is that it does mean you will have to look at it at some point in your life. So having patience with yourself in that journey and with the other members of the family to address some of the underlying dynamics that may be causing avoidance and of things that need to be addressed, and that sense of not being able to make changes or disempowerment, having that patience with family, because those things will be constant things that will come up until you actually get to a place where you see, I can be heard, and then I can actually ask for maybe a change or a different dynamic or a different outcome. You may not get that outcome with family, but you can certainly ask.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about quite a bit here today.
Yeah.
The audience feel about this topic? Do you have any suggestions or tips or things that you've experienced that helped with this?
And if you have areas that we discussed today that you wanted to explore in deeper, let us know, because there's a lot in this topic that we started to poke around. So there might be an area you want us to dive deeper into. I know for me, helplessness is an interesting place. I think that's where we don't see how powerful we are. So that's one area I can explore. And thank you so much for joining. We welcome any of your comments on the platforms, and we look forward to connecting again. Thank you.
Thank you.